Hey Facebook friends, we are live at lunch for the Open for Business series in July, and I'm here with Don Baker from WTOC. And Don, thank you for joining the show today. We're going to be speaking about interview tips, and I thought, who better to bring on than Don Baker?
Well, I'm so excited that you thought of me, and thanks for letting me be a part of this wonderful venture. I just think that it's really a wonderful tool for everybody to have, no matter what your profession is, because honestly, especially the way life has changed, there's so much media out there, not just the traditional newspaper, television, and radio, but podcasts and Facebook and Instagram and things I don't even understand yet myself.
You'll get there.
But we need to be prepared.
Right, and the whole point of Open for Business is to really help everyone, any age, any profession, learn something new about how to deal with professional things in business. So last month we talked about public speaking. Before that we talked about LinkedIn, going live on Facebook, different topics like that. But I'm so excited to talk about media interviews with you because I have been watching you for a very long time. I'm from Savannah, most of you know that, and I just love Don Baker on WTOC.
Oh my gosh! Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate your support. I've grown up on. I feel like I've grown up on TV here.
Yeah, I've grown up on TV.
So I'm really excited about you leading the way and us helping the people who are tuning in and who will tune in later on to see what we've chatted about.
Absolutely. And everyone on Facebook, we have Elizabeth off camera. She is going to be monitoring your questions today, so please feel free to comment in there. Let us know what questions you want to have. The article that we have for today gave some really great tips, so we'll just start with there. And then I figured any other tips you want to jump in with, just bring your expertise in.
I sure will.
Okay, great. So the first tip of the article for today was research. Do research on what kind of interview you're going on or what show. So with Don, you're not necessarily going to be doing mid-morning live. You would be more out in the field and calling people to say, hey, I really want to come interview you about something like that. Do you still do stuff like that?
I do. I don't do that every day because now I anchor 4 newscasts, but especially for special things, and I'm always working on stories. I usually don't do the one-day turn like the traditional reporter. But yes, I call people from time to time and maybe something exciting that they're doing in the community. And just always remember, when you're approached by an interviewer, that means you're doing something right, because we've learned about you and we already are giving you that stamp of approval. So number one, don't be that afraid because we like you already.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's one thing that we do. And I also just recently ended a show that I did for 3 years called Bounce Around Savannah. And it was one of those formats like a mid-morning live. It was a talk show format. And so we talk to people who are doing positive things. But one thing that I like to, number one, always tell you, when someone calls, just don't be afraid to ask the host, so exactly what is this for? How much time will we have? Will I be able to talk about my business? And one thing that we try to do, especially when it comes from a news standpoint, we really don't want to just give you a free commercial, which honestly you're going to get that anyway because the name of your business will be under your name on the program. But of course, we want to look for how you can help people. So if you have tips to help people, and also do your very best always to be a part of your community. If you can give back to the community in some way, if you have, say, like a day of sales where a percentage is going to go to a nonprofit organization, or if you do an event where you're going to help someone, that's always great. That's a big tool for me. That's what touches my heart, because there's so many people, as beautiful as Savannah, the coastal empire, and low country are, we know there are a lot of people in need right around us.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there's so many ways that all of us can help. And when you also have the heart to invite your customers to be a part of that sharing, I think that's a wonderful thing. And those are things that all news, traditional news, social media always want to feature people like that.
Absolutely. And just, you're highlighting good things in your community. And as much negative news as there is out there, let's bring some positive news back. I love getting people connected in the community. It's just, it is all around wholesome, and it makes you feel good when you cover stuff
like
that.
One other thing, when you're doing your research too, these days it's so easy to find those shows online somewhere. So make sure that you at least find either the podcast, the newscast, the talk show, and look at one of them.
Yes.
And that way you can kind of see what you're getting into. And one thing that I like to tell people, sometimes, especially with us doing so many things in our newsroom, I may not have the time to send you questions,
Mm-hmm.
but if you want to send me some questions that'll help me, I appreciate that.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I may not use them all, but
Mhm.
at least it gives me an idea of what we're doing, and also I try to arrive early, or you get to me early and we can chat, and
Right.
I want to do whatever I can to make you feel comfortable, because this is your time to really sell
Right.
what you're doing.
Right. And one thing I like to recommend too is, yes, absolutely look up the show, watch it, be familiar with the format so you can talk to people like, oh, I've seen you've done this on this show. Watch the body language of people on the show. Are they sitting at the front of their chair? Are they sitting at the back? And then another good point is to look up the bios of the people you're talking with, so you can have some talking points with them and you form that connection. It's always good to form connections, especially to people who may cover your business, but that you may have some commonalities that you didn't realize, like Dawn's daughter. That's something that you started, and you have a book out. So you're an author. There's just so many things that I've learned about you just reading your bio that I could in turn sit down and talk to Dawn about. And that's just one of the good things to look up when you're researching. Is there anything else you like to research before you get in an interview?
Well, what I typically do is I'll ask the person I'm interviewing, if you could send me your bio.
Oh, yeah.
And something about your business or your service. There's a young lady I'm going to do a story on. Well, young man, let's talk about this one because I love this story. 15 years ago, I met this cute little boy. He was 6 years old at the time. His name is Coltrane Williams.
Oh.
What a name!
Yeah.
So he was 6 years old, and he was a part of the Gap Cute Kids campaign. They had a little model search that was a national program. Now back then we were in Savannah.
Yay!
He's a Savannah kid, and so he was the third runner-up. But I like to believe it's because of me and the TOC connection, because I went to his house, did a story on him and his parents, and so we encouraged our viewers to vote for him. I can't remember how you voted then, because the internet wasn't so big back
Probably
then.
Probably
call in.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
And so when you walk down on Broad Street, there was a Gap store, and here was this bigger than life-size picture of Coltrane there.
Yeah.
So through the years, he has been into acting. He graduated from Savannah Arts Academy. He's done some singing. So fast forward to a month ago, I'm sitting came home late because I get off after midnight, so I turn on TV and I turn to the another network, and I'm watching this show, and I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. It's called Love Is, and it's on the Oprah Winfrey Network, and it's based in the 90s. So of course that's me, being young and dating in the 90s. And so I look at this young man, I said, he looks familiar. It's like, I know him. Coltrane is now starring on the show on the Oprah Winfrey Network.
Wow.
He's now 22 years old.
Yeah.
So I got on my phone the next morning and called and texted his parents, hey, is this my Coltrane? Okay, my Coltrane.
That.
So they told me yes, he had gotten this huge opportunity, and he's on this show. He's one of the stars. And he's back home for a couple of weeks. I went over and interviewed him just last week.
You
so right
did?
now,
Oh.
so I'm working on this, putting the story together. The holdup is trying to get some video from the network, because they have approved it, but the person who actually releases the video is on vacation. So as soon as I can get that video, you're going to see that story on WTOC. But what happened was, I love these stories because it honestly also shows how we follow people and we care about people. So we were able to go into our archive system. I have the video of this kid when he was 6, playing pool with his little his cousins at his house. And when I asked him when he was 6 years old, I said something about, what do you hope happens, with this contest? He says, I hope I win a lot of money so I can buy my mom a convertible. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this child. So those are the kind of things. So now I have that's in our archive. We can remind the community that you all voted for him, and this wasn't just the end for him. Now he's actually doing things, and he's a regular.
And it's
on a big
because you
show.
made that connection.
So I love those kind of stories where we can get our community involved, supporting people who are in our community, and that's the best thing ever. And also just those stories that I truly love doing too, are the people who are doing really good things interesting things, helping people that aren't the names that you always know.
Sure.
So when someone may send me an email or call me and say, hey, you ought to know about this young lady who lives in my neighborhood, who's been doing this,
Who's a
and
rock
that.
star,
Yeah.
and you have no idea about it. Yes.
And so when I can go out there and go to that neighborhood and tell that story, but that's what really warms my heart. You know, there are a lot of great nonprofits in our community, but they get the buzz because they're formal. They usually have a big budget. They're doing big things. But you know, it takes the individuals who are all doing something great, you know, to really make a big difference as well.
And bring people together. I love that. So the next point of the article, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was prepping, right?
Prepping.
So, you prepare for your interview. Usually when I tell people to prepare for an interview, it's kind of like you were talking about earlier, send a list of questions that may help and answer them. So write out your list of questions and then practice answering them. Do it in front of a mirror. And I know everyone says that for public speaking. The same is true for interviews. You watch how you speak, you watch your facial expressions, your hand gestures, all of that comes into play with an interview. But also once you say it a couple of times, you'll realize like, I'm not saying that exactly right. Let me change this just a little bit, and then it sounds much smoother and nicer. Other things to prepare for is make sure you sleep well the night before. Do not party all night. Go to bed. Put some eye cream on. That is real. That is very, very real. Do your hair, you know. Just the little things to prepare.
Just a little extra.
Just a little extra. That's right. What tips do you have to do before you get into an interview?
Well, one of the things, you know, the sleeping is one thing that's awesome, but I will tell you, honestly, your nerves may have you so excited and anxious. You may not be able to sleep well, but my mom taught me a long time ago, just lie down, at least your body is resting. So you may be sleepy, but at least you'll do the best you can.
Sometimes I turn on a meditation, and it's like a guided meditation where your mind is checked out somewhere else, but your body's just comatose. It is like sleeping. That works too.
One of the things I also, when you're rehearsing what you want to do, try not to memorize what you're going to say for the answers. But what I typically do, especially when I have live shots and unscripted things, I make bullet points. So at least that way you're not going to forget that you want to thank that founder. Or, like I remember talking to someone one day, and after we had finished the interview, and I thought the interview went extremely well, there were 5 things he remembered that he wanted to say, and those were the most important things. They were so much more important than what we had spent 20 minutes talking about. And then he had missed his moment. So there's nothing wrong with even having a little index card if you'd like, and just put some little bullet points there of things that you definitely want to make sure that you remember. And always when you record yourself, you can even use like your iPhone or whatever you have, any smartphone you have. There's always an app on there where you can record. And you can hear how you're answering those questions beforehand. I think that really, really helps. And there's nothing wrong with, when you get there to the studio or wherever you go, if you go into a formal place like that, to sit on that chair and figure out what feels good for you. Because I'm short, so sometimes on a lot of even the chairs that we have at WTOC, I have to figure out how I cheat it best so that I can, position my body the right way.
And I'm tall, so it's the opposite. I have to figure out how I can get the right angle. You're absolutely right. One thing is too, you mentioned recording yourself. When I first started doing interviews, I talked so fast, it was like a mile a minute, and I was just going like this, and I was so excited and nervous, and that's how I sounded. And I realized very quickly, slow down. The more you say it, the more comfortable you feel saying it, and you don't talk as fast. So that's a real problem that a lot of people have. So that's something too.
And also, don't be afraid to grab a friend or a family member and just ask them to ask you some questions.
Sure.
And especially if you do have an interviewer who will send you the questions, or if you've made up some questions that you've shared with the interviewer, you might be surprised how happy they are to get those questions, because that helps them, because most of the time, these days, everybody's multitasking. So that'll really help them do their homework. And that way, someone at home or someone who you know is going to tell you honestly, well, I don't like that answer. You might not want to say it that way.
It sounds a little funny.
Right. Or I remember when I first started my television career, the first year or so, almost every night when you got off the air, you'd look at your video, and you'd be surprised the weird tics we all have, from the things you do with your face to... And you just had no idea because we've never walked around with a mirror
or watch
as
yourself.
we've talked to anybody.
Because you're just here
Yeah,
talking.
yeah. And that's the way you improve. And the more you do anything, the better you'll become.
Sure.
But the most important thing, especially if this is, say it's a book that you've written or a product or service or your business, that's something that you're passionate about, that you work with day in and day out, just remember, you can relax because you have all the information.
Right. And that brings us to our next point.
Mm-hmm.
Bring value to the audience. Don't try and make fluff look good. Everyone in the newsroom will tell you, I don't like fluff. Take out the adjectives. I really want to hear what the story is. Bring value here. You're the expert in your industry, and you really want to show that and bring that to the front runner. I see Elizabeth raising her hand. Do we have a question here?
Brian Judson also adds in here, he said, Dawn's passion totally shows. I would suggest that as an added tip, get in touch with what excites you. More than just talking with a smile, your passion will shine through and engage your audience.
I love that, Brian Judson. If you didn't hear Elizabeth, the comment is on the bottom of the feed. Brian said that Dawn's passion shows through in all of her newscasts, and that is so true. That's why we asked her here today, because she is just glowing every time. I love
Thank you so much, Brian. I've truly been blessed. When I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Oh wow,
And
you're a good pediatrician too.
But I realized early, because I was a candy striper at Memorial when I was in the 8th grade,
Wow.
and never realized as an 8th grader that you would spend most of your time with kids who were seriously ill. And I cried so much and prayed so much for strangers, and 3 of my patients passed during that summer.
Gosh.
And then when I got into high school and finally got that physics class, I realized that science was never my strong suit. So I was like, ugh. And back then we did those career assessment tests. And I've always liked English, and I can talk to a tree. So I started moving toward those careers where you can write,
where you're just out,
and that's how it all came together. And I honestly even though journalism has done a lot of changing since I started back in the old days, I still basically love what I do and really love telling stories. And I think that's one of the things that I try to stress with the young reporters in our newsroom is just remembering that when you go out and you are presenting anyone, we call them stories, but these are people's lives, so you have to handle it with care. Whatever we say, there is a reaction for everything that we do, so you want to always be respectful, even if you have to tell some bad news about something that's happening to people.
I would say that you add value as a reporter to the story too, because you always bring your own personal tie-in to the story. Even though you're objective with your reporting, I don't mean that you're not objective, but you always have that personal connection with your stories. And you can see that on camera. And whether it's passion is the word you want to use for it, or the connection, but you see how you relate to the community. And I think that adds value. But for the people who are doing an interview too, remember, you're the expert, you know your business. Again, we mentioned this earlier, don't try and write a script for yourself, because you know what your expertise is. Go with it, own it, talk about what you know really well, and it will show.
And also, it might help, because sometimes when we do something day in and day out, we don't realize the knowledge that we have.
Right.
But just sit down and take some time to think about the facts and how you can help others, and maybe you need to research yourself, because there are things that have changed in your industry,
Right.
and it might be a matter of 5 or 10 tips that can help someone who's watching. I think that would be a really good thing to do.
Oh, I love that.
Because someone was telling me that, someone told me one day, well, I just own a pet store. I said, no, it's not just a pet store.
Yeah.
Most of us have pets or have had pets. They're an important part of our
They're a
lives.
piece of family.
Maybe you can give some tips in terms of just how to make sure you have a healthy, happy pet.
Sure.
So now you're an expert in that. And she's
Yeah.
like, I never thought about that
Right.
before. But sometimes it's right there with you, but you're so close to it, you don't realize it.
Oh, absolutely. And small business owners get a little nervous too when they get in front of a camera, and they're like, well, why would you want to interview me? I've heard that before several times. Why would someone want to interview me?
Never say that.
No, you're a great person to be interviewed. You own a business. It's a successful business. If anyone wants to interview you, you've been in business for a while, and you know your industry. Own it. Really own it. So.
And that's true. One of the best things that you can do is be a role model for people. You never know every single day you are, because there's so many people who want to start businesses, they don't know where to begin.
Right.
They may want to do what you're doing and they don't know what your secret to success is.
Sure.
And I always feel like there is nothing wrong with sharing that secret. I asked somebody one day when I was interviewing them, what do you think has been the difference with your business and how you've been so successful? And the lady looked at me, she said, I'm not going to give you my secret. And so I was like, oh, okay. So when it was over, I said, well, you know what? I just kind of feel like, you kind of missed an opportunity. She said, what do you mean? Well, I want people to copy me and then they do what. I said, well, you know what? But what's for you is going to be for you.
Right.
And we were put on this earth to help each other.
To help each other.
And it's not going to make you do worse because you tell me that, what, perhaps you went to SCORE and got all this great knowledge from a wonderful treasure in our community that helps everybody who either wants to start a business, a nonprofit, you name it. They're free classes right there on Liberty Street.
Look up
SCORE. It's capitalized. SCORE. It's from the University of Georgia, right? A lot of experts who know what they're doing when it comes to business.
All
they will give you
retired
mentors.
Executives.
The classes are absolutely free. You got to check out that. But I just kind of feel like when you're selfish, that's going to stop your blessings too. You're not going to prosper but so much.
Right.
When you're willing to open up your heart and help other people, you'll be blessed so much more in return.
Howard Morrison told me a great quote on that, and he said, business is about making connections, building people up, and really helping everyone in business, not just yourself. And I've always had that mentality. Like, it's not about making a buck. It's about your heart and soul and helping people. And if you have that in business, then share it. Share everything you can, because that is the value. People respect you more, and you become an expert by teaching other people. So.
That's true. That's true.
Absolutely.
I think our next little section is turning off the distractions.
Oh, this is difficult for millennials. Let me go ahead and tell you. With Apple Watches, with cell phones, with earbuds, it is so hard to completely turn things off. But when you're in an interview, do not have your phone ring. We were talking about that before the camera came on, that people would just come into interviews and all of a sudden it's mid-broadcast and your phone rings because you think you're a heart surgeon or something.
Yes. And so many times, we are very good about reminding people, please make sure you turn your phone off or at least put it on vibrate while we do our interview. And they still refuse to turn them off, and I just don't understand it. And the worst thing about it is not only is it distracting for them, because you're going to lose your train of thought, and sometimes you never get that momentum again, because now you've gotten relaxed when the phone rings. It rarely rings at the beginning of the interview. And then also, when the host or the interviewer is a little annoyed with you, that can determine the way that interview goes. Because now they're like, I was interviewing someone one day and some of the raunchiest music came on. After I checked with her 3 times to see if the phone was off. And so here, while I was trying to continue the interview and we were trying to keep the smiles going, someone who was right in front of us, because we were looking at the camera, who's behind that camera, was trying to find the phone and figure out how to turn it off. So it felt like a disaster. It wasn't as bad for people at home, but they could certainly make out a couple of the words that were not very nice. So make sure you always do whatever you can to keep yourself in the moment, which is so important, because you have that one moment. And always remember, when you do a great job on that interview, that's that's your best selling tool, because now you're going to share that, and more people are going to see it, and other people want you to be a part of their show as well. But when you do a really bad job, and sometimes we do. I have bad days.
Everyone
oh my gosh,
does.
no matter what you
Everyone
do.
Does.
So you hope that people will give you a second chance.
You
so
hope
make
that no
sure,
one views it.
you're not doing anything to sabotage. Like when they arrived here today at my house, I made sure I turned off the dishwasher because it's very loud. I don't want to hear that clunking up there in the background. So you want to make sure that it's quiet and we would have time to really have a good chat.
Right, absolutely. Turn off other music, turn off any devices that you have. Gosh, pro tip, do not piss your reporter off. That is just how the interview is just gonna bomb if you do that. I know, and then they'll never call you back. If they like the interview that you have, they may have another topic that comes up 6 months to a year later, and they remember, you know what, I interviewed that lady from Care to Trade PR. Let me call her back. She's wonderful. I really enjoyed her on camera. She was a great interview, quick, easy, done. They'll call you back, and then you're their go-to person.
That's right.
So it's a wonderful tool.
That's right. It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
I think we're moving on to how to position the phone correctly.
Oh, yes. Okay. So this is mostly for either Facebook Live or we were talking about a phone interview. So I don't know if many people experience this with their phones, but my smartphone has a serious issue with the speakerphone. I can hold it on this hand and no one can hear me. I can hold it on this hand and everyone can hear me.
Really?
So it's a really weird thing. So I do a lot of speakerphone, but it is very odd. I have to make sure I clean my microphone a lot before I talk to people on the phone. I don't even think you could do that, but there's a YouTube video out there for that if you ever need to clean your microphone. But if you can't be heard correctly on a phone, then your quote isn't going to be correct. It will have horrible grammar, or you may miss words, and you're gonna, when you see it, and this may be more for print or radio, but when you see it or hear it, you're like, that's not what I said, that's not how I sounded. But that is something that, it's a kind of a pro tip. Make sure you've tested your phone call one of your colleagues and say, hey, can you hear me correctly? Is this a good location? And then be like, thank you so much, hang up with them, and then do your interview. Again, that's kind of prep, but if you're doing a phone interview, it's really important. Also, Facebook Live, do a tripod. We have a tripod, that's important. Sometimes we're in the field and we're like moving around a lot, which is great. But if you're sitting somewhere still, try and get a tripod. Try and get someone who has their elbows on the table or something to hold up and keep it stable.
Right. And also that's good for TV as well, because you'll notice that we do a lot of phone interviews sometimes too, especially when something happens in Savannah. You need to talk with some of the corporate headquarters far away. We actually record them on the phone, so you'll see most of the time we'll pull a picture and have a little phone graphic. So it's really important. And I do know, like, I'm going to get a lesson from you, because that's one of the reasons that you'll probably never see me do a Facebook Live, because I have short arms, so I can never position my phone.
Yeah, you just get a tripod thing.
So I need to get one of those. But it just always looks so weird. It's either up my nose or just really strange. So and
a selfie Facebook Live is hard to do. I mean, it's easier for me because I have the long arms, but it's hard to do in general. It's just easier when you have some kind of tripod or a selfie stick. So a friend of mine got a selfie stick that's Bluetooth. Fabulous. Oh, that's neat. I love it. It also has a tripod on the end of it. I'll send you the link.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I might need to get that.
Yes, it's absolutely wonderful. But you put it up, and then you can see yourself, and you can go live like that. Yeah, I'll send you the link.
I like that.
Yeah, it's cool.
But it's interesting because with all the technology, years ago, I never had to worry about social media. Now a part of my job is I have to have a WTOC Facebook page. I'm required to update it several times a day. So, you have to make sure that you're doing stuff that will connect with the viewers and also keep them informed. So.
Do you have any interviews that are primarily online like that?
Don't give them any ideas, no.
Okay.
Now, the one thing that we did Facebook Live during my Leadership Academy in June. So a lot of the sessions, if the speakers allowed us to, we put highlights. We did that. But of course, I can't take responsibility for that. Thank God, goodness. Marjorie Young and her daughter Carol were there, and so they did a lot of that for me. But I thought that was really great to at least let people see what we were doing with the young ladies.
And capture the content. Content is king, and I think that's the next.
Okay, we have learned the technology. I think we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
And also be yourself.
Oh, well, we have no problem with that.
But you know what? But you have to learn to be yourself, because when you first start and you do your first, second, even your 10th interview, you're still kind of anxious. So I would suggest using that time you have with your friends and people who know you well, who really want to see you do well, to make sure you practice with them. So if there are 5 to 6 questions that take your bio or information about your business, your product, or your service, and write some good questions.
It all comes back to this.
And just set up just like we've set up here, and let your friend ask the questions, and then you all go back and evaluate. Well, how do you like how you're sitting there? Do you like how you're speaking? Are you speaking too fast?
Are you doing something like a robot? Because that happens a lot. Actually, I see people go on TV and they freeze. They absolutely freeze.
And it is not easy.
No,
We're not
it's
trying
so
to say
hard.
that
so
it's
hard.
easy. You have to get
No.
used to people seeing you in that light.
Mhm.
But the more you practice getting that buddy who will be honest with you, now you need someone
Right.
who can be a good critic and
Right.
critique you with love.
With love, yeah.
And that way you can watch this through several
Mhm.
times even before you actually go
Go
on with the
on.
real interview.
Yes.
And that way it almost kind of feels like second nature.
Right.
And you can do a really, really good job.
One thing I tell people too is ignore the camera.
Yeah.
Completely ignore the camera. Look at your reporter,
Mhm.
look at the person you're talking to, and have a conversation. It's not about how you look, what lighting there is. The person behind the camera is worried about that.
Yeah, they're
They
fixing
have that covered. They have it covered. It's not your job to worry about that. What
Mhm.
is your job is to make sure that you're presenting information in the correct way.
Mhm.
And as long as you're genuine, you're relaxed, and you look at the person, it's a lot easier to become yourself. To
Mhm.
become yourself on camera. It is a learned skill, and a lot of times for prepping, we help people put a camera in front of them. We actually take a camera, put a tripod on, bring them real close, because when you're doing a TV interview, you're this close to that camera, and it is nerve-wracking. But if you can do that a couple of times, you feel more comfortable
Mhm.
with it. You really do.
And sometimes, like you said, that's really, really important when you go for a television interview, because usually there's more than one camera, and if there is only one camera, they're going to position it so it looks very natural.
Right.
If you're looking at the person
Right.
you're interviewing.
Mhm.
If you turn around and try to address that camera directly, now you can get away with that on social media because we have to look there.
Yeah, we're
This
talking
is
to
the
you.
only camera in the
Yes.
room. But just if you just follow the tips that that person, the host, gives you,
Yes.
it'll be great. But I know that a lot of you will be doing things like Skype and Facebook Live, so make sure you also practice with the positioning before
Right.
as well, because
Right.
can't they turn the cameras around so they could see how they look?
Yeah, we can. We didn't do it with this one because
Yeah.
Elizabeth is monitoring it for
Mhm.
us. But yes, a lot of times I have it where it's selfie mode and we can just see how we look while we're doing it. But then sometimes that's a distraction too.
But no, I don't mean for doing the actual interview, but
Oh,
when you're
okay.
practicing,
Oh, sure.
they could sit and make sure
Sure.
which chair they feel comfortable in,
Right.
what height that phone needs
Right.
to be in,
Yeah,
or camera,
absolutely.
so they can make sure that they're getting used to the
Mhm.
right angles for themselves. And honestly, it is hard
It's so
to do it
hard.
by yourself.
It's so
And I will tell anybody who's watching, when I was in my 20s, anybody could shoot me because, you're all thin and you think you're cute then and you're all confident. As you get older and,
What are you
the
talking
face
about?
gets,
Nothing, Jesus
a little puffy and, a little age gets on you, you're very scared. And so, and even professional photographers don't always capture us well, but the only thing you
Sure.
can do is just, put on your nice little outfit and
Yeah.
something that's comfortable.
Yes.
That's one thing too that I want to make sure we tell
Oh,
people.
yes.
A lot of people, come for interviews and they are thinking about, oh, I like this outfit, but they haven't tried that outfit on in a long time.
Right.
And if it's too snug at home, do not wear it on camera because
No.
it is going to look like you're about to burst out of it
Yeah.
on TV.
That's
And
right.
even though I'm a girl with some weight on, or I struggle with my weight, but you always try to find those clothes that fit properly.
Mhm.
So you'll never see me with sleeveless dresses on because I don't want the sausages out. So, but I'm just saying, TV or cameras are not
Yeah,
flattering
that's true.
in terms of they
Yeah.
do add weight to
Yeah.
you. So I've been told it's about 10 pounds. So
Yeah.
just be careful and keep that in mind when you pick your
That is
outfit.
very
One
true.
thing too, also thinking about it too, when you do go on TV or do your phones, colors are great. If you can wear color jewel tones, that's what they
Mhm.
advise us to wear, and you'll look good against any background.
Interesting.
Try to stay
Jewel
away
tones.
from
Yeah.
patterns.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. No
Mhm.
stripes. Stripes
Mhm.
really mess things up. So,
So,
patterns
yeah.
in general,
The
yeah.
patterns in general are kind of rough because high definition is
Mhm.
very sensitive too. So it's not as forgiving as analog was a few years ago.
Sure.
So
yeah.
and also with hair and stuff like that, just kind of make sure that it's just a little more conservative. Things that we
Right.
could wear on the street look great, but oftentimes they don't look good when you get in front of a camera.
Right.
So you don't want to make sure that you just find an outfit that you're comfortable in, and if you have to sit down, that you still feel good sitting down in it. Sometimes you'll be standing, so just kind of test it. When I got into TV, I made sure one investment I made was I bought a cheap full length mirror.
Yeah.
So because when I first started anchoring, we were sitting then. We don't get to sit anymore.
Sure.
But so I had to in the dressing room, I had to make sure they gave me a chair that I could sit down in.
Yeah.
Because
So
when you were buying your
seeing how
jackets,
it
you
looks.
wanted to see how the jacket looked when it laid on you when you were sitting
I
down.
never thought about
So,
that.
yeah. So all those things, you know, they just make you feel better when you know that your outfit is going to be right there where you leave it. And a lot of people ask me, because in modern times, you know, a lot of the girls dress a lot more casually. I feel comfortable in my jackets because it's easier to put the look together. And when we turn to talk to weather and sports or walk around the
It's still
studio,
put together.
everything is where, you know, it started,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
And so I think everybody should choose what they want to do, but you have to make sure that you can keep it, you know, keep it where it needs to be
Together.
and what's easy for you. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I just think that, you know, any kind of interview that you can do can really help you, but you just have to make sure that you think about it before you do it. Even as long as I've been in television, I wrote a book back in 2010. This is not to sell books, I just want to let you know. I had been in the business then since 1989. And the first day, Jody Chapin and Tim Guider invited me on Mid Morning Live to talk about the book.
Yeah.
I did not sleep the night before because I was so nervous.
You?
And everyone laughed at me, but you know what? That was the first time I was talking about me.
Yourself.
Because all of my career, I was talking about other people.
Yeah.
And I was a nervous wreck. Now, once I got there and took my deep breath and started to talk, it was okay, but I was so nervous.
So that's one thing too. I tell people when you get in there, take a yoga breath.
Yeah.
And I call it a yoga breath because I want you to deeply breathe.
Cleansing breath.
Like 10 breaths in, 10 out.
Mm-hmm.
Really, because that will just calm your whole nervous system down and it makes you feel more confident. It also straightens your spine when you do that. But it's interesting how when you're talking about yourself, it makes you very nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, and of course, you want to get it right and you want to, you know, give people the information they need, so it's a lot to remember. But write a few little bullet points there, you know, always remember that, you know, you are the authority. And that should be a little calming for you, too.
Yeah, you're called on here for a reason. You're the authority.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So the last point we're going to wrap up with, unless there's any questions. Elizabeth, any questions?
Not at the moment, but I'm going to come back with an extra tip.
Okay. Elizabeth has a bonus tip for us, but I'm going to end it with smile. So many people get on camera, and I see this a lot with Mid Morning Live. They're up there, and they realize that they're in front of the cameras, and that they're looking at Tim and Cyrena, and they're like,
Nerves.
yes, it's all nerves, but it's a frown. It's a frown because it's resting face, and you're really digesting. You're being on camera, and you're a little uncomfortable, and all of that anxiety is on your face. Fake it till you make it.
That's true.
Fake it. When you get on camera, the minute you sit down, I automatically go into this whole, hi, I'm Cynthia Reed.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah.
to meet you. I'm from Carriage Street Public Relations, and I always keep this sorority smile, is what I call it, on my face at all times. But it really does make any shot that they do, it can be a wide angle, it can be close up, you are smiling the whole time, and you look great.
Now, unless you're talking about something really sad.
Then don't smile. You know? Hopefully, if it's your business, you're not talking about something really bad. But yeah, I mean, if it is a story out in the field, you probably do encounter really bad stories where you don't want people to smile.
But one more quick tip, I just thought about this. Also, if you're asked to do an interview, make sure you ask the host if they will allow you to share some pictures or video.
Oh, yeah.
Because that always makes your story more interesting.
Yes.
Because you're not just the talking head there, you're showing your products, your services, your book, whatever it is. And most of the time they will say yes. And even if it's a podcast or something, when they archive it, sometimes they'll put your picture up there, copy of your book, or copy of your store, or whatever you're doing.
You can take those on your phone too. A lot of people don't realize that TV, you can send in B-roll, which is just basic video roll. I don't really know what the B stands for, but it's just video footage of scrolling past something or zooming in on something. If you take that on your cell phone, you can submit that as part of the story. And you're right, ask permission. We like to add photos sometimes, but every interview does. Usually they'll let you send something like that.
And one last thing, make sure you always turn that camera horizontally.
Oh, yes.
We want the full picture. When you do it this vertically, you get that little Band-Aid picture. Not good for TV.
No, it's not. And, you know, just turning it sideways is a wider angle anyway. It just looks better in general.
Yes.
And that was one of our Facebook Live tips as well.
Mhm.
Now, Liz, you said you had one more tip you want to...
So we do have a few questions.
Oh, we have questions. Yay!
Trevor Hess.
Hi,
is
Trevor.
Sitting on a couch for an interview, do you sit with your back straight on the couch back, or do you sit forward in the chair?
So this has been a long interview, and you've seen me I've done both. I have sat back, I have sat forward. Mid-morning live, I always recommend people coming to the front and sitting straight.
Feels good to you. You want to make sure that you present yourself as having a good posture though. So what I've done here, I'm kind of like in the corner of my sofa. So I actually have a pillow that's back here. And so that kind of helped me, so I stayed in the same position. But you always want to make sure that you're sitting as straight and tall as possible.
Right.
So if you can manage that at the edge of the chair, that's good.
Right.
Some of those chairs are so big that I do end up moving forward because I get kind of lost in the back. So you'll have to try out the chair and find out what feels good to you.
Sure.
But the most important thing is just making sure that you're sitting straight and tall. And if you might need to put a pillow behind you like I did.
Mm-hmm.
No one will see it. And if they do, who cares? It's okay.
Yeah. Who doesn't like a pillow? Really? What's another question, Liz?
Marjorie asked, are there any colors or patterns that don't look good on camera? But I think we had that answered.
Yeah, Marjorie, we did cover that a little earlier.
Dawn
She recommended jewel pattern or
Those jewel tones
Mhm.
are really great on camera. Think solid, stay away from the busy patterns.
no patterns.
And you know what? I'm going to look for a PowerPoint that I have that
Sure.
I was given. We had a consultant who came to the station, and I will share it with you so you can
that'd
share
be
with your
wonderful.
people.
We'll share it on
Mhm.
Facebook so y'all can have that too.
Okay.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Because it went through the whole, these days and times, because of HD, they recommend you staying away from ruffles and patterns and dealing with the solids.
Mhm.
And if you're going to be sitting down, they recommend single-breasted jackets. Because I had to stop when I first started anchoring. Back then I was a lot smaller and I had a lot of double-breasted jackets. But when they crop you here, all people at home saw were the two lapels fighting.
Oh yeah.
And it makes it seem as if you're closed off.
Right.
And also with jewelry, be sure that you just keep it clean and perhaps
Minimal.
maybe a strand of pearls or one strand of a necklace with a small pendant. Stay away. Hoops are fine, but stay away from the real dangling and the what do you call like chandelier earrings because those are busy. And when you talk, people just they pay attention to the earrings that are dangling.
Shiny.
Studs are good, but I usually wear the hoops. I have a fuller face, so that tends to look a little bit better on me.
I like it.
So,
yeah. Any other questions?
Stacy Jennings added in that we should know and practice the names of everyone who will be on camera because people are protective of their names. They would like to have it pronounced correctly.
Very true, Stacy. Absolutely. If y'all didn't hear Elizabeth, Stacy put in a comment that you should practice people's names before you go on camera. That goes back to research. Make sure you know who your interviewer is. Make sure you know how to pronounce their name. Look up a previous video to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Like Syria, that was a hard one for me, but I've learned how to pronounce it because she says it every day on camera. So, that's really important.
And another thing along those same lines is make sure, and you're going to think this is a silly suggestion, but you wouldn't believe the number of people I've interviewed and they don't have this information. Make sure you always have your contact information readily available.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you know your social media accounts, your phone numbers that you want public, your website, whatever you want. Because oftentimes an interview will end with, so how can we contact you? And I've had people go, couldn't believe it.
Right.
So just make sure you have that, even if you have to bring your business card or whatever, where you can read that off so they can make sure that the viewers have that, the listeners have that, because that's your commercial right there.
Yeah.
That's the money shot.
Yes, that is the money shot. And it really is hard sometimes if you have multiple jobs to remember, oh my gosh, what's the contact information for this nonprofit that I'm volunteering for? What's the address? But if you have a little cheat sheet, that is ideal. And again, practice.
And then, Dawn, I have one question for you. What would be your one advice, it might be two, for new professionals who are being interviewed and new reporters who are doing the interviewing?
So if you didn't hear, Elizabeth's question was for new professionals who are being interviewed and new reporters who are doing the interviewing, what is Dawn's one or two pro tips?
Okay, well, all of those are great. But I would definitely, the new professional who's being interviewed is to talk to the person who is going, the reporter. If there's a reporter calling them saying, hey, I heard you're doing great things down here at your ice cream shop. I'd really like to come and interview you. Just find, oh, thank you so much for considering me. What is the interview about? What do you want to talk about? And then you'd start telling them about your company and what you think makes it special, because they'll formulate questions based on that. Make sure that you drive that narrative. Right. So if you know that what makes it unique, you don't necessarily have to give out a secret ingredient, but what makes it unique is the fact that, your people feel that everybody is family, or everybody in there is a specialist on, everything chocolate, or, this is grandma's way, or you all also do huge give backs in the community. Make sure you tell that reporter those things. And I would follow up with an email with that reporter. Hi, it was nice chatting with you today. Just wanted to follow up and confirm what we talked about. Make sure I have the times and everything right. So I'm going to expect you on Wednesday at 10 a.m. here at my store. This is a one-pager document on my store. And again, I would really like to talk to you about, our initiatives and how we're working in the community, blah, blah, blah. So then you're feeding that again. It's reinforced piece of paper that if they want to formulate questions, or you can do that for them. I would advise, honestly, if you can write 5 good questions from what your business is all about and give it to that reporter, doesn't matter what else they ask you, you're going to get your message out there.
Absolutely.
And as for the reporters, they have a wonderful advantage I didn't have. When I started my career in 1989, there was no internet. So we had to do research the old-fashioned way. Stop by the library, or go in the newspaper, or ask an older boss. So do your research. There is no reason for any reporter to find out in a morning meeting that they have a story and they don't know anything when they arrive. We have a wealth of information right there in front of us. So it is our job, and even if it's a matter of calling, say some commissioner, hi, my name is Dawn Baker, I work for WTOC. I've just been assigned the story talking about, some new invention or whatever that you've come up with. Can you give me a little bit of information about it before I arrive? They'd be flattered that you want to know about it. No, so you have to do your homework. Everybody needs to be prepared. Many, many years ago, there was an historian named W.W. Law here in Savannah. And a lot of our reporters would come back to the station and say, oh my gosh, he's so mean. He was never mean to me. Well, come to find out, he challenged them because he told them that it was not his job to do their job. They needed to come there with at least some basic knowledge so that they could have a conversation. Don't just walk into my business with 5 questions and walk away. So what, most of us always do, because we were trained by older journalists who took the job very seriously back then, is that we try to do our homework, and at least we were familiar with the subject, if not that specific entity.
Right.
But all these tips are great.
All of them. Maybe we just tell them to watch the video. Are there any other questions on Facebook? Okay, well, thank you all for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Dawn, for coming on. We really, really enjoyed it. I
had a really good time.
I love an afternoon at your house. And this is my first time at Dawn's house. I'm loving it. It's just,
come back. Let's do it again.
Let's do tea.
Yeah, we can come and have tea, or some sandwiches,
all right,
some
guys.
salads.
Well, enjoy the rest of your lunch break, and we'll see you next month.
All right.